Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello, welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands, and I am joined by
Steve Yurko.
In case you're joining us for the first time because you're a big Sonic fan and you're here to hear about Jason Griffith, we haven't done this in a minute where we kind of just tell you what our show is about. So I guess now's a good time to do that.
Sure.
Should I do that?
Go. You don't need my approval. Go right ahead.
We are a behind-the-scenes look of 4Kids Entertainment, which is a company that brought shows like Pokémon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, Sonic, and other shows too. They dubbed these shows initially, brought them to English-speaking audiences, also did original animation like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This company was originally a licensing company started by a gentleman named Alfred Kahn, and then they opened up an entertainment division, which was led by someone named Norman Grossfeld. You can hear our interview with him. But they, received a lot of pushback when they first tried to bring Pokemon to the United States. So it's been really interesting to hear their journey from first getting the rights to Pokemon, dubbing it to the company that it became. So that's my spiel. But on to the fun stuff. We have Jason Griffith coming in today. So, Steve, I'll expect you to have a lot of One Piece questions.
I will do my best, and both to come up with a bunch of interesting questions and also not to bombard Jason with all those questions. But, I'd be curious to hear, what he has to say about playing Sonic for so many years. I haven't seen Jason at a convention or anything, and I'm sure he probably talks about it a lot at his appearances.
He's newer to the convention scene.
Oh.
But yeah, he's doing them for sure. Yeah, he's out there now, which is great.
Yeah, because I know there was like a one-day Sonic convention, I think like in Santa Monica last year that my friends went to, and he was there, and I just assumed he probably does conventions, but
yeah, he's newer, which is great. I have not been able to run into him yet, unfortunately, but hopefully soon. Yeah, and he did a lot of stuff there. Like, honestly, it's so funny. Again, he's like one of those people like Erica Schroeder that I did not run into all the time at the office. So I'll be interested to hear his whole, his backstory and all that stuff that I was not familiar with.
For sure.
And figuring out the voices for those characters.
And whatever stories he has to say. Hopefully, I
say whatever he wants.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going to walk away from the microphones and we just let him talk.
I don't think that will leave a bad impression at all. I think that's a great way to start. Yeah. I'm looking over his IMDb, or I like to call it IMDb, right now. And, he's, again, somebody who's still working to this day in voiceover. So that always makes for a more interesting interview because they're able to compare what it was like to work at 4Kids back then as opposed to now, especially when things like anime are being taken a lot more seriously and the fandom is just way more intense than it was. But you know what? You guys want to hear from Jason, and we will do that in a minute. But before we do, check out our sites. Where are they, Steve?
For sure. Starters, you could just go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com. You use the number 4 when you write that out.
4Kids Flashback.
4Kids Flashback, just like how it looked. Just how some of the what am I saying? The number 4. I don't think I have to explain it anymore.
The number 4, that's it.
It's just the number 4. Go there. That's where
in case you're new.
Episodes are on there. Like anywhere you could find us, it's linked there. But that also means you could follow us on social media. 4Kids Flashback on most platforms. And if you like the show so much, you want to hear more episodes, you want to hear the following week's episode a week early, ad-free, support us on Patreon. And
thanks. Yeah, do that.
And there's plenty of other things we're posting on that Patreon as well, exclusively. And
bonus content, some scripts. We have watch parties, Discord, stuff you love and stuff you need. And no ads. If you hate ads, that's a place for you to go. That's patreon.com/4kidsflashback.
When you hate ads.
And yeah.
You go to Patreon.
If you hate ads. Do you think I can call Jason Sonic during the interview? Would that be inappropriate? If I just like
do you want
like,
to just like ruin the whole vibe of this? You could call him Sonic. I could just call him Usopp the entire time. And
yeah, totally. I've never, I haven't done an interview like in the guy, like as a fangirl. I think it would be kind of fun and just get really
So I
nervous.
noticed your nose is not as long as Usopp's.
What was that like to get into character? Did you put on a fake nose? Oh my God.
Can you run fast like Sonic?
I'm just dying. All right.
I would say do that with one of your close friends, but for someone you didn't run into very much,
yeah,
maybe not.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll start thinking about who I can do a really uncomfortable interview with.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, here's Jason. Our guest today worked at 4Kids and did a ton of stuff there. You probably know him best as, let's just cut to the chase, Sonic the Hedgehog. But did you know he was also Usopp in One Piece? Did you know that he was also additional voices in Yu-Gi-Oh? But we'll find out which additional voices if he can possibly remember. Did you know that he was Lord Darkar in Winx Club? And a foot ninja in Ninja Turtles, a bartender in F-Zero, which, we'll probably spend the bulk of our time talking about Sergio Bucksworth in Tokyo Mew Mew, or Mew Mew Power, as it came to be known. In other words, welcome to the show, Jason Griffith.
Howdy. You just named a bunch of credits that I do not remember.
We like to play that game.
How do you not remember the bartender?
I kind of do remember the bartender now that you mention it.
Do you really?
Now that you mention it, yeah, because F-Zero I feel like was one of those shows that I auditioned for every single character and didn't get anything. And then I was like, I finally get to play a bartender.
And also, why was there a bartender in a children's show?
That is a great question. I'll find out. I'll be back in 5 hours.
But also, I wonder if they changed the word beer on things to water. Or just made it very clear this is not alcohol for children.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be annoying and ask a little bit of your history because I was saying during the intro, you and I were not people that ran into each other at 4Kids a lot. Certain people I saw all the time. Others were like a mystery to me.
Who did you see all the time?
Megan, Lisa, Veronica, Eric Stewart, but who did you run into all the time there?
I feel like I ran into Brian Fenkart a lot.
I don't even know. Wait a minute. Who is that? I don't even know who that is.
Oh, man. Yeah,
you made that name up.
Maxwell Leavenworth. Dan Green a lot.
Yes.
Eric, obviously. Darren Dunstan. Andrew Rannells in the beginning.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's.
But wait, who was the first name that you said? Say
Brian
that name
Fenkart.
again.
Brian Fenkart was with my agency, Innovative Artists, and I believe he was on a few shows, and then he went off to Broadway, and he was starring in Memphis. So that took care of his
he was
voiceover
done.
career.
Maybe he used a pseudonym, so we're just gonna remain a mystery man.
Yes.
But you, Jason, are a mystery to me. So I don't even know where you grew up. Where the hell are you from, Jason?
I'm from a village of 210 people outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in Lake County, which is the smallest county in Ohio, right on the lake. Lake Erie was my backyard. My mom still lives there. My great-grandfather built the house. And I lived there until I was 17. And then I moved to New York City with my cousin, and we both pursued acting. Now, the funny thing is, my cousin was 18 and looked 14, so he worked on every single television show, commercial. As a high schooler, he was just raking it in. And I had the opposite problem because I was 18 and I looked 40, so I was going out for those auditions, but people would be like, I don't see him as the editor of the school paper. Yeah.
Wait, I want to do a whole podcast about this town of 210 people.
Lakeline Village.
I have so many questions. Okay, wait, so... You must have shared a school with a neighboring town, I'm assuming, right? Because you could not. How could there be a person in every other grade or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It was Eastlake, Ohio, is the next biggest town, and population several thousand. But yeah.
Oh, thank God. It's like that town in Massachusetts where they vote. There's only like 6 residents of the town or something. That's what I picture. Did you know everyone in the town?
No, because we lived on a main road, so it wasn't like one of these deals where you could walk to friends' houses and whatnot. Anytime you were leaving my yard, you did it by car, and you usually were driving to Eastlake or Willowick or Willoughby.
So you weren't like riding your bikes around a cul-de-sac with a bunch of friends.
No, I wish. I was walking along the beach and trying not to drown because I didn't know how to swim living on the lake, which makes perfect sense. Yeah, I know, right?
Have you learned since?
I mean,
ish.
You know, I have a swimming pool, so I try to tread water.
Well, thank God you have sonic speed because,
Right. And also Sonic's fear of water. So.
Yeah, I was about to nerd alert Tara there. I'm like, oh, Tara.
I didn't know Sonic was afraid of water.
Yeah.
Why? What is Sonic afraid? Like, does Sonic have a whole? Is it like a trigger thing? Like, does Sonic have like an issue with water that happened as like a young child?
I think it was a lot like a cat. You know, you don't dunk a cat into a pool.
Right, but are cats scared of water? I guess they are.
Yeah, I think so. I would imagine so.
Yeah,
ooh,
I had a cat for 4 days as a kid. That was the limit. So I don't remember.
Wow, 4 days.
Yeah. It's another podcast.
Tara, if this is any indication of how deep my knowledge of Sonic goes,
yes,
and how disastrous this interview could be.
But see, I like the idea of a Sonic movie where we just investigate the water issue. My interviewing style is ridiculous. Okay, so you get out of Ohio. I mean, did you know that you wanted to? You knew you didn't want to stay.
I did.
You wanted to pursue this, and okay.
Yeah, you know, very early on, I did my first school play when I was 12 years old, and I was absolutely enamored with the entire process. I can't even talk about it without getting goosebumps thinking about just having a script, having lines, being on stage, being in love with every single girl in the cast, them not reciprocating the love.
That's why most boys get into it.
Yeah, but I wanted to be John Stamos, you know. Right. I watched so much Full House, and that was my happy place, you know. I knew I wanted to be an actor. I knew it was an impossible dream. But I kept that dream alive, and I remember when I was 14, I wrote a slew of emails, fan mails, fan letters to so many actors, even like Peter Frampton, just anybody I could find an address for, asking for advice as an actor. And only 2 people responded. One was Jack Nicholson. He just signed a thing and said regards.
Okay, you got an autograph. Yeah, right, that's nice.
But then I got a postcard from B. Arthur. And she wrote that she said, you should continue performing in front of any and all audiences. And then she wished me the best of luck. And I'm
going to show you what I have in my booth. I don't keep
it's
much
B. Arthur's head.
Basically, it's the Golden Girls Funko Pops.
That's
amazing.
If you
guys don't know who B. Arthur is, was on the cast of Golden Girls among many other television shows.
And what a wonderful, wonderful... First of all, what a wonderful human being that was.
Yeah, the fact that she took the time to write back to you is really... Now, as a kid... Okay, so this list of people you wrote to, I'm just astonished that B. Arthur made the cut. Like, what was it about B. Arthur that made you want to write to her?
I wrote to everyone I could find. I wrote to Stephen Bochco, Dave Coulier, Barry Gibb. Oh, man, the list goes on. It was basically, it was like a desperate Hail Mary on my part, because I'm like, someone's going to cast me if I write these letters, you know.
Was it also that, was it partially that you thought like, oh, they'll just give me a job, or was it also that you wanted the advice?
Both. I really thought that the way most, I think, amateur or wannabe actors approach a lot of the business is, if I just tell someone my interest in this, they're going to say, oh, of course, yes. You want to know how to get into voiceover? Follow me. You know, I really thought that would be the...
Yeah. But I think you were smart to ask that advice. Like, I think, I say to these kids at conventions, like, sometimes they're just like, how do I do voiceovers? But if they ask me a really specific question, I say, like, the fact that you're asking this and asking this specifically means you're serious about this. Like, that's kind of how I gauge how serious.
I also... part of my advice is don't think that anyone's going to do the work for you. And, and obviously we both know how much effort it takes and took to get to the place we are. And I mean, it's 25, 30, whatever years later. That's sort of something that I think people need to know right away is that you're just going to be rejected, and it's going to feel like you're, as John Ritter said, climbing up Mount Everest without oxygen, and that's just how it's going to be for a long time.
Well, something you said before piqued my interest. You were with your cousin who was getting all this work.
Yeah.
Now, I would assume that as much as you love your cousin, that creates a competitive spirit in you and a jealousy. Like, how did you learn to cope with that? Because that's not an easy thing for someone young.
Right. I was extremely, extremely jealous because he was getting, all I wanted to do was be on television.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was getting so much work, your
cousin's Brad Pitt, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Mark Ruffalo. I don't know if have heard of him.
I just listened to a fantastic interview with Mark.
Yeah. Not my
where
cousin.
he did an amazing impression of Kenny Lonergan, which
that's great.
Yeah, but that's really we'll talk about that another time. But yes, that's that's tough.
We had the same agency, and for a time I was working at that agency as sort of an assistant, and then I'll tell you the story. It gets crazy. And so I'd see the emails, or not emails, faxes come in, the phone calls and whatnot. And, my cousin would be booking, but I would always be getting great job, understood the material, only person who understood the comedy, stuff like that. But I just wasn't.
The good notes.
Yeah. I would get great notes. So I knew, I knew I wasn't bad, but I also ran a video camera for auditions for the agency, and I saw people who were really good. And I would watch those auditions over and over after they left, thinking like, what is it? Why am I so drawn to this performance? Why is this so good? And I really started trying to find that in myself, and the best way was just to be truthful. That I found it wasn't to try to act or try to imitate or do any of these things. It was like really find the truth within yourself, and that's what the camera would capture,
Yeah. Well, it's so funny, too, and again, not to make this an interview about Mark, because we will move on, but in the interview I heard, he was talking about bartending for years and years and years. So everybody's goalposts are different. Like, you saw him as, like, someone working more than you, and to him, he probably had someone else in his brain that was like, well, I'm still bartending. Why are they working? Like, I don't know that any of us are ever satisfied with where we are.
Right.
And maybe that makes us better, that we keep working harder and pushing, and it also weeds out the people who are not serious about it.
I will say I found there is, and I just want to clear up, Mark Ruffalo is not my cousin.
Wait, are you serious? You really were joking? I thought
I was
serious.
joking. No, Mark Ruffalo is not my cousin.
I really, you kind of look like him.
I know, that's why I said it.
I took it as a joke, but then Tara was responding sincerely, and I'm like,
that's why I was like,
I
think I'm understanding. Yeah.
Well, because you know why? Okay, and I'm not going to edit this out because that's funny, and you fucking tricked me. But he's a big enough name that it's impressive, but it's a small enough name that you're not like he's making it up. And you kind of look like him.
Right. But that was a joke.
That's funny.
Wait a minute.
You know what's even funnier?
Note to self, no more jokes with Tara.
No, but I was going to mess with you during this interview. We had a whole stupid dialogue, Steve and I, in the intro, and I was like, oh, I don't know him well enough to mess with him. Or
No,
Steve
please
said
mess
that.
with me.
Oh my God, I was going to do the whole interview as like a fangirl and just call you Sonic the whole time.
Oh my gosh. You can do that too. That's fine.
Sonic.
So you've been to a convention.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Tara here. Just want to let you guys know that Steve and I will both be heading to some conventions near you, hopefully soon. Steve will be at Anime Expo in Los Angeles, July 4th weekend. He'll have a booth there, so go say hi. He'll also be at Anime NYC, August 23rd through 25th. If you want to come say hi to me, I will be at Tokyo X, June 15th and 16th in Houston, Texas, Anime El Paso, June 22nd 23rd in El Paso, HypeCon in San Francisco, June 29th, the Long Island TCG Show, July 14th, Heroes Hideout in Albany, New York, September 28th, and we'll both be adding new stuff soon. You can also head to our social media accounts for more of this information. I'm at Tara Sands VO, Steve is at Steve Yurko, and I hope to meet you in person soon. So, I gotta reframe this because I was really into this interview I just saw with him. Okay, rewind. You're auditioning like crazy.
Yeah.
And also what you're saying too is you were in the room watching the auditions, and that's great advice for up-and-comers because, a lot of auditions, I don't know if they do as much as they used to. They use readers, and that's a great way to learn.
Yeah, for sure. I interned for a summer at ABC primetime casting, so I was running.
Smart.
I was running the camera there. I was reading, and then the casting directors would bring me in for stuff. But again, I was at this point where I just didn't look my age,
Yeah.
So it was sort of this serendipitous lucky break that I started going out on voiceovers because that was never in the plan. That was never in the cards. Not once did I think, I could pursue voiceover. It didn't
even occur to us. Yeah.
Not even once. I had done a goofy sort of outgoing message on my answering machine with a cassette tape, so I'm really dating myself here. And it was a game show host of the Jason Griffith Show, and the guests include you after the beep, And my agent was calling me for another audition, something on camera, heard that. Turns out they were casting that day or that week like a Lexus or BMW commercial on the radio that they needed the cheesy game show host for.
So how funny.
John, my agent, heard this, sent me on the audition, and I booked it. And then, as agents do, I kept getting sent out over and over,
It's funny, a couple of us have that story where we booked our first voiceover job. And I had the same thing happen. And I was like, I don't know how to voice. What is this?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's cool. And there is something to be said for studying voiceover and blah, blah, blah. But there's also something to be said for a natural ability. And I never want to discredit that. I feel like I've been ashamed to say that at certain points. But I'm like, no, I was quoting commercials as a kid. You and I maybe understood it. Again, I think there are things you can learn, absolutely. But yeah, you had a natural ability in this area.
Do you know why? This is a story I've told a bunch now, so I'm sure someone has heard this. But I asked for a video camera every Christmas since I was 5 years old. And birthday. It was the list was 10 items and 1 through 7 was video camera. But we grew up poor. We were on welfare for a time. And so it just wasn't in the cards because, 1980s and 1990s video cameras were like $1 trillion.
Yeah.
So instead, every year I would get a voice recorder. I'd get a microphone and some sort of recorder. And I basically pumped all of my creative juju into that voice recorder that I wanted to put into the video camera.
Yeah.
So I'd been doing it for so long, and unbeknownst to me, creating the know-how for doing voiceovers and for listening back and listening to what I liked and recreating things, and then coming up with a new spin on things. Like that was every day, and so. That's sort of, I always say if I'd gotten the video camera back in the 80s, I'd be on TV right now.
But you took it and you ran with it. And I think that just says so much about your tenacity as a kid and also your drive. This is about drive. It's about longevity.
Yeah.
It's about all these things that, again, talent, looks, great voice, blah, blah, blah. That's a piece. It's like a tiny piece of so much of this.
It is. Because it's again, it took 5 years to book Sonic. And I wasn't auditioning for that long, but that's how long it took. So in that time, there were so many stretches of this isn't working out. And I'm working at Barnes & Noble, then I'm working at a pizzeria, and then I'm working dressed as a...
Which Barnes & Noble, more importantly?
Lincoln Triangle.
Oh, I lived right near there. That was...
Did you really?
It became like a clothing store. It was heartbreaking.
Yes. That was such a... I will say it started off as a wonderful job because I loved books and I love books, but that became more of I'm cleaning up after people like I would in Port Authority kind of job.
People are messy.
Yeah.
Well, what people don't we've actually talked about this before, like the New York of this whole thing. And what people, like Barnes and Nobles were where we would kill time in between auditions, which is why I asked. And we probably left a mess. The one near 4Kids offices, I spent at least 5 hours a week in that Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, was it 22nd and like 6th Avenue or something? That
something
was wonderful.
Like that.
Yeah, I have so many memories from that bookstore.
Right, because we'd always have like weird amounts of time in between auditions.
Yeah, and if you didn't live in Manhattan, there was nowhere to go, so you just go to the bookstore.
Or even if I lived uptown, I was like, I don't have time to go home, but it's cold out. Yeah. I need shelter. Yeah. And Steve was during the time we were recording, Steve was at art school right around the corner from us, which is like kind of brings it all full circle.
Yeah. Yes. Walking back and forth on 23rd Street. No knowledge at all that you guys were up there. But.
And watching all the shows, but having no idea that that's where it was happening.
By college, I was
not
like,
I'm
out of here. But
that's fair.
I still would have found it cool. But
right? So how did the audition for anime or Sonic or any of that stuff happen? Because Sonic wasn't the first show 4Kids did. Did you work on stuff before Sonic, or was Sonic the first?
No, it was the very first. But I had an audition prior to that for 4Kids. So the short answer is I'd never done anime, and I booked something. I don't even remember what it was, but it was big. And it was like they wanted like a Jack Nicholson kind of sound. And I booked it. And it was, I want to say it was like $50 an hour or something. And I was like, oh, yeah, $50 an hour. I'm like, how many chicken parmesans can I buy? That's a true story. Every time I'd record it in the beginning, every session, I'd be like, I could get like 7 chicken parmesans after this if I wanted to. You know?
That's amazing.
So at the last minute, they said, Jason's not, like, I didn't even go in for the first job. I booked the job, scheduling it, and then I get a call from my agent, and they say, Jason's not experienced, so we're not going to, he's not going to be ready. They made the decision just.
Wait. This wasn't 4Kids.
It was not 4Kids. No, this was like.
Okay, good, because that's a very cliche 4Kids story. Like, we've heard that happen many times to people at 4Kids.
Oh, yeah. I haven't, actually. But. So I was heartbroken, but that same director named Bill Timoney brought me in for something.
Oh, yeah.
He brought me in for something completely different. It was just a couple episodes of this anime called Gravitation. And after our session, he said, you're really good. And I remember I had to go up to like Irvington or something like that for the sessions. It was like up on the Metro North. And he said, you're really good at this. I know Fox is holding their Saturday morning cartoon lineup auditions next week. Why don't I give your agent a call and get you in for an audition? I was like, great. So I went in for Shaman King. That was my first audition for 4Kids, and I didn't get a call back. It was just like, well, okay, I guess that was that,
Right.
And I was, I think, inexperienced enough at that point, thinking, well, if they didn't even call me back, they hated me.
Right.
A week and a half later, I get a call saying they want you to audition for Sonic the Hedgehog. And I went, okay, sure. So I didn't get a call back for this unknown show, but I'm going to book Sonic, right? So I go in, but I remember I prepped. I was recording. I had a little handheld like cassette recorder, and I was like walking around Astoria Park just like doing all sorts of voices and like, what are we going to do, just practicing. I go in, I audition. I thought, I went fine. And then I get a call back. And I go in again, and they called me back for Sonic and Chris Thorndike, his friend. And
we'll talk about that.
Okay. So Michelle Dunn, the producer, comes in, and she's like, that's a great voice you're doing for Chris. And this is after we had already done the callback. She's like, she was going to let me go, but she's like, before you go, just switch those voices real quick and do the Chris voice for Sonic. Oh. And so I did that, left thinking, well, they hated me again, because otherwise, why would they have me,
right.
Whatever.
What a weird direct. Yeah, at that point, we didn't know. We wouldn't have thought of that.
No, exactly.
I love that she had the foresight to think of that, though.
Yes,
that's cool.
Yes. So that week, I'm working at my agent's office, and my agent John is out of town, so I'm answering phones. And I happen to be sitting at his desk, and I answer the phone when 4Kids calls and says, "Hi, Jason Griffith came in last week for Sonic the Hedgehog." And I went to myself, I'm like, "Oh, great! I get to hear the rejection firsthand," And they said, I said, "Oh, yes, Jason, great." And they said, we'd like to book him on Wednesday for the part of Sonic. And the phone almost dropped out of my hand.
I just got chills.
I know. Isn't that the weirdest story? Like, how does something like that happen?
Pants.
Unreal. So here's the crazy part. I write down all the information, and then John, my agent, calls in. He was at a convention in Florida, and I tell him, I'm like, John, I booked Sonic. And he says, no, you didn't. And I'm like, no, I promise I did. He did not believe me until I finally put one of the other agents, like the commercial agent, on the phone to tell him, yeah, he booked it.
So you get the call and you're freaking out. Who's the first person you tell besides these agents?
Obviously my mom. And then
and your cousin, the Hulk.
Okay, so that and so no, I do call my cousin, and at this point, now my cousin had he lost his hair. His hair was thinning, so he stopped getting these parts that he was getting before.
Oh, the very young parts. Yes,
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So it wasn't as prosperous for him. This is 5 years later,
right?
And I just remember. And I'm sure I told him this story before. He probably doesn't remember, but I told him, I'm like, Jer, I booked Sonic, and he just went, F you.
And you're like, F-Zero.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the next one I'm going to work on. It's interesting, too. Like, we haven't gotten into this as much as I would like to on this show, but, like, the competitive nature of this industry, I feel like with voiceover, I liked it because there was more of a camaraderie and it didn't feel as intense. Like, we felt like there's enough jobs for everybody, and we would kind of help each other out more so than in the on-camera world. Yeah. Did you find that with voiceover, too?
To be honest, I always, and I didn't think about this until just now, but it is true that I always enjoyed going into the voiceover auditions more so than the on-camera, because I just felt like, I don't know if genuine is the right word, but the people, the actors for the voiceovers, they just seemed more compatible with me, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'd be the same people, but a lot of times you go into the on-camera and it's like there's the cool guys, like, I can't find the sign-in sheet. Like, isn't that awesome?
Oh, my God, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah.
But then for the voiceovers guys, it'd be like, hey, what's going on? You know, like they'd always just do crazy, like they were more like comedians, you know? And I just vibed with that.
And as a female, you know, you'd all be in the bathroom fixing your hair at the same time, and you'd walk into a room of people who looked like you vaguely, and because I would walk in feeling really confident to an on-camera commercial, and then I would audition, and then I would see the room of girls or women, and I would be like, oh, forget it. Like, it just, but with voiceover, it didn't feel like that. I felt like, I can go in there and transform and be whoever I want to be. Yeah.
There was never that feeling of, I'm not going to get this because X, Y, and Z. There was always the feeling going into a voiceover audition that I have a strong chance of getting this, you know. And, you know, I would always use my time in the waiting room wisely. And a lot of times I'd get complimented on that by the casting directors. Like, man, you were out there, you know, you really brought what we needed in that 5 minutes you were out there. You really like figured it out. Where a lot of people are just like,
oh God, hey, I was just looking at cute boys when I would be waiting out there. Well, I mean, you know who was like it was like Will Arnett. Like, I mean, there was a good Bradley Cooper was in that whole commercial world. I was distracted. Yeah. So you were doing your work.
I was trying to.
Where did you study? We didn't talk about your acting training or lack of, or maybe a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, I studied. I didn't go to college. I did 2.5 years at the William Esper Studios. I studied at Stella Adler. I went back to Esper for a master's class a decade later. Studied with Anthony Abeson. I studied with voiceover-wise. I studied with Dorianne Elliott, who was love Dorianne. She really love Dorianne. Isn't she? She's just the. She still coaches
wonderful. You guys. If you can find her online, if you're someone who's looking to make a demo or coach, Dorianne is phenomenal and the best hair. Just
absolutely the best hair.
I hold on to the most shallow things. See, I knew Dorianne from auditioning because she used to be. She still does some casting. Yeah, but I used to just think she was. So I think about it too. Like, I just thought she was so cool.
She's great.
I want to be as cool as her.
I know she not only was cool, but she had the most simple advice that I ran with. That I really, you know, I think has helped me book so many commercials and really get my mind in the right place. Because I think when when I was going in for 5 auditions a day, and you don't hear anything for like weeks, and you're like, man, I must be really doing something wrong. You get really heady. I would get heady about it and think, I need to change my whole approach. I need to, and then you just get your confidence level drops. And Dorian's advice to approaching an audition was so simple, and it was such a, oh man, it took all of that pressure off of me. And I was able to apply it and make, and do lots of, a lot of commercials.
Was there something like in her? I mean, is it something you can share, like a just talk or something like that she said that just resonated?
She's the first person who said to conduct myself in the studio. Use your hands. Just be fluid about it. And the approach she used was flat, fluid, small. So you just approach every script very flat, fluid, small. You don't look at it with any inflection, any blah, blah, blah. You just try to get it up to legal speed. New maple brown sugar flavored instant Quaker oatmeal. It almost takes longer to say than it does to make new maple. You know what I mean? So that just getting my lips to say it so fast that when I go in, I could do it half that speed and actually make sense of it was so invaluable to me.
That's very cool advice. Yeah,
and then the other thing was, like you said, always like, and this is a game my wife and I still play, is anytime you see a billboard, a little catchphrase, you just start doing that catchphrase 3 to 5 times in a row, different inflections, different ways. As soon as you see it, just do it, because as you know, our job as an actor, 99% of it is like, here's the script, go. Like, you didn't get any prep time,
Yeah, and you studied with Esper, and he was heavily involved in the Rutgers acting program, which a lot of our fellow castmates came out of that Rutgers acting school. So I wonder if that's a coincidence or not, or if there's something in that training that really prepares you for this kind of work.
William really taught me to listen. That was the biggest thing. Listening and speaking truthfully. Not in a boring way, but in a just how to find it in yourself where you just believe what you're saying, as opposed to performative, I wish I could study with him every single day. Like, it was such
I'm envious, man. He sounds like an incredible teacher.
Yeah, he was.
All right, back to 4Kids, because this is the 4Kids Flashback podcast. And I know Steve and I have more 4Kids questions.
I do. I do have something relating to with the Sonic audition and getting that role. I know he didn't appear in the first season, but was it always planned for you to voice Shadow as well, or did that decision come later when he popped up?
So John Dixon was an engineer at 4Kids, and I just remember I was in the studio, probably recording Sonic or Turtles or whatever it was at the time. And he came in with a picture on a sheet of paper and some lines as Shadow, and he said, "Do you want to audition for this?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." So he said, "After your session, just come over to Pro Tools 3 or whatever it was, and audition for this." And so I did. And as we do, we just sort of pull these voices out of nowhere. And I saw the picture of him, and at the time, I had a roommate. Named Carl, and Carl always talked like this, and he'd always be smoking a cigarette talking about his book that he wrote. And so I just thought, if I modify that a little bit, I could make that Shadow, and so I auditioned with that voice, and I don't even think there was a callback. There might have been a callback. I don't remember there being one. I just remember it happened so fast. It was like, a day or two later, they're like, "Okay, you're going to do this part."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So who directed you mostly on Sonic?
Andrew Rannells was the first. Chris Collet came after Andrew. And then Ron London, who was an engineer.
We'll be talking to him soon. Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh, Ron, I love Ron. Ask Ron about... my cousin and I both fancied ourselves rappers for a time, and we went to Ron's personal studio and recorded rap music with Ron. It was the best thing ever.
Oh, my God. Are you willing to share any of that we can play a little excerpt of right here?
If I could find it.
Okay. If he finds it, we are going to play it.
Oh, please. Yeah, please.
That is
End
amazing.
my career.
And did you even realize that you were feet away from Sean Conrad, who was a professional rapper who ended up singing the One Piece rap? Okay, Jason.
I did not know.
Okay, so listen, this is a note to Jason and to all of you. If you have not listened to our interview with Sean Conrad, don't stop this episode. But after you listen to this episode, listen to Sean Conrad. He was a legitimate rapper, and he was an engineer at 4Kids. But none of us knew about his extensive rap background. He's phenomenal. Okay, so you're working on Sonic, and I are there any memories or anything specific about that show that come to mind that you want to share, or you know?
And I think this is also advice to any up-and-coming or young actor or voiceover actor. My whole experience in the beginning was wondering when they were going to fire me. Because, I was inexperienced enough and really trying my best. But at times, I mean, there'd be just take after take because I couldn't get something out or it needed to be a different way. And I just didn't have the tools yet to really understand that direction was a collaborative art, not a criticism. And so I think a lot of times when they direct me, I'd think just inside a little part of me would be like, they hated that. They hated that.
We all have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's so good to hear it from someone else. That's why I'm saying, like, if there's the young actor out there that, hasn't really had a lot of experience, just expect that feeling of you're not good enough. And then expect it to go away the more you work and the more you work on yourself,
Right.
Right. But
that's so interesting. Even after all that, that's so crazy.
Oh, because in the beginning
they did replace people. It just happened. So
I got replaced. I booked the lead on a very popular show. I want to say like 4 or 5 years into working there. And I was very excited about it. And at the last minute, someone said, no, he sounds too much like Sonic. And I was so heartbroken because it was it was towards the end where there wasn't a lot. It wasn't the heyday where like 10 shows were going on at once. Yeah. It was like they had like 3 shows. And I was like, oh gosh, I got the lead on this. This is great. I can buy more chicken parmesans, And
Did they give you a chance to alter it? See, that's what's frustrating to me is that like, and again, like a really seasoned voice director, and we were all young, and a lot of us were, and the voice directors were young, and the producers were young. They probably didn't know to say, "Hey, Jason, can you tweak this so it's a little less Sonic-y?" Mm-hmm. And you probably could have done it.
Sure. During the audition, nobody ever brought that up, and the fact that I booked the job made me feel like, well, that was the right choice, whatever I did for that voice. So, where was I going with that? But anyway, so that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But again, another lesson learned. It's easy come, easy go sometimes.
Well, we've talked about this on the show before. Like, it's an industry where you have to have a healthy ego and yet be ready to be replaced at any time and know that. So it's like a very weird yin and yang where you're like, I'm the best, but I can be replaced.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I do remember I want to say it was the first season of Sonic X. Michael Hagney was one of the producers, so he came in, and we were recording this episode where Sonic is pushing around a girl in a wheelchair, and there's sort of like a comedic moment where Sonic almost pushes her over a cliff, I believe. And
that's hilarious.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
But I did this reaction when he's almost going over the cliff that got Michael rolling laughing. It was the first time I ever got anyone to laugh like that doing a job. And that's one of those moments that was just indelibly printed on my soul and my brain because I thought, that felt really good and I want to do that again. I know I could do that again, So that just little things like that gave me more and more confidence that it's not a mistake,
Yeah.
Like
I actually was on the phone with Michael earlier today. Like, he's a funny guy, so when you make someone like that laugh, it's even more rewarding. Like,
yes. Because I was intimidated by everyone, so I'm like, if I could make them laugh, that was gold.
Speaking of gold, we interviewed Susie Goldish, who played Chris Thorndike.
Yes,
and so she told us a story so Mike Pollock was one of the only people at that time, like, on message boards about these shows. And he would always tell her how much the fans hated her. So my question is, did Mike Pollock ever tell you anything terrible?
No, he would
so
always
I can give
say,
him crap for it.
he would say, Jason, the kids want to talk to you online. They really would love to see you. I was talking to the kids, and they're always referring to like as the kids.
Yeah. That's funny. I'm so glad I didn't do that.
Nothing. Yeah, I didn't either. I did get because this was the MySpace era, and I remember getting MySpace messages of people that just wanted me dead. They hated what I was doing, or
On
because I replaced Ryan Drummond. It was this whole.
Right,
It was
because
the whole.
There was an original cast. Yeah.
It was the whole first wave of you're not this person. You should really go home and be a tree surgeon.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh, I'm sorry you dealt with that.
Well,
that's
But funny enough, I mean, as much as like the better, fan mail was great, like the ones that favored me, it was still like sort of a badge of honor to be getting any sort of mail.
Yes. Yeah. But a tree surgeon specifically is. And I'm just kidding. I know you don't really mean.
Oh, I love trees.
Now I'd like to see what you could do with a tree. So moving on from, what was the next show you worked on after Sonic? I know chronological order is tricky with memory, but or vaguely.
I want to say it was Turtles, and I think it was Usagi. The rabbit, the samurai rabbit. I think that was the second show.
Okay.
But there were so many all at once, and there were so many I didn't audition for. Pokemon was another one. I played a tennis instructor named Harrington, I think, and then I played a surfer named Brawly, and this was the original Pokemon.
Yeah.
Eric Stewart was directing it, and then Turtles kept bringing me and Sean Schimmel in because they knew we would kill our voices playing every single goon and henchman and anybody getting thrown off of a garbage truck, like he and I would both be. It was Darren Dunstan was directing at that time that show, and so he would just bring us in every week.
Oh yeah, because he would do some of the incidental roles too. Like he would do more of that because it was Sue Blue directing the cast records.
Exactly.
And then, so did you ever get to record with the full cast?
Oh yeah.
You brought in. Oh good. Okay.
Yeah. When I was doing Usagi, I would come in with the three turtles that were in New York at the time, and then I think Sam was in LA.
Remotely. Sam on remote.
Yeah. And it was so funny because they all had this repertoire, and I just felt like this young, innocent, fresh-faced baby in the studio. Like, how do I compete with this? So I don't. I just do my job.
Well, I think we were all like I always say, the buzz around the studio was how much fun Ninja Turtles was to work on.
Oh,
and
so
I remember
much fun.
that was like the first time I was like nervous going into the booth because I was like, and they were my friends, but I still was like, this is different.
Yeah.
This is another level that they're playing on. When does One Piece happen in all of this? And I know Steve will have One Piece questions.
So I don't remember. I mean, it must have been like 2 years in. And Chris Collet was directing that, as I recall. And so I went in and auditioned for every single male character. And when the audition for Usopp came up, and I'm looking at his picture and I read the bio, the week before, I believe, was Memorial Day, or 2 weeks before. And this was 2004-ish, I think. And so my friends and I had gone to Astoria Park that before this audition happened, and we were just taking pictures with 35 millimeter film. So back in the day, there's a picture of me next to a bag, and I'm like this, and the bag's right here. And so my friend looks at the picture, he's like, oh, look, this is Eddie the Troll. And so I came up with this voice, says, oh, I've got a bag. Oh, I'm sitting under a bridge. And so that was just playing around. And then when I went in to audition for Usopp, I immediately, my brain just went, use that voice. And so I did, not thinking anything of it. And then I got it. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I got the job and I couldn't believe it. I was like, I was just playing around. Like, I was throwing ideas at the wall. And I just love when unexpected things like that happen,
Yeah. And you were probably more relaxed by the time you did that audition too. Like you were just, like whatever. And they were open to like the broader stuff on that show too. Well, all the shows actually.
Yeah.
Did any, aside from the Ninja Turtle stuff, did any of that hurt your voice? Like, or could you sustain it forever?
Yes. No, that did hurt. But again, early on, and knock on wood that I'm this lucky, but like I would start to lose my voice or would lose my voice, and it would just regenerate. Like the next day it would be better, a couple days later. And I think from just doing this for 2 decades now, my voice has learned to sort of kind of reassemble itself, you know? And just lots of hydration. You know, I don't do soda, I don't smoke, I don't do any of the stuff that could really damage your vocal cords. So
right.
Were like the Usopp sessions, like some that like, oh, we can only do this for so many hours a day, or this is going to kill me, or I'm very curious.
Generally, we wouldn't go any longer than 3 hours a day, and I could do it for 3 hours, and they gave me breaks and everything, but it was so much fun. You know, I would crack Chris up, the director, and you know, I think on that show I really started ad-libbing just to, you know, do a take where I say something that's not in the script, but it wouldn't make it into the show. It would just be to crack, just to crack everyone up. Yeah. So I think, you know, I always, and if I could book, I know the booker at the time was Kristen Thorne, so I'd always tell her, like, I can't do any more than 3 hours at a stretch. Yeah. Because then your voice really starts to go, you know.
Mm-hmm. You're bringing up that improvising. I'm curious if that ever happened in any other show where you might have improvised like a line or something that made it into the final script, because you played another character in GX, in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. That felt like it was definitely deviating from the original Japanese script, and I'm curious how much of that was the adapted script and how much of that was you.
None of it was me. No, I was following the script pretty closely, and you know, I don't remember if there was any moments where I was asked, "Well, how would you say this?" You know, more so now because I do a lot of dubbing foreign live action TV shows and movies into English, and that's much more of a, you know, I think if we said it this way, it's going to fit better, and that makes that you know, you know, that'll make it into the final product.
I do that as well, and I feel like it's more open for collaboration with that because it's matching human lip flap as opposed to a cartoon. So everyone's just working hard to make it work.
Oh yeah, and sometimes
in a different way. Yeah,
the adaptation can just be like, who hired this adapter? It could be painful. Another thing that happened with when I was in New York, I was doing the narrative description for Law and Order SVU, and so a lot of times, if you've worked on narrative description, you have to fit. You know, Stabler pulls out his gun in this amount of time, and a lot of times it would be overwritten or underwritten, or it wouldn't be what was happening on screen. So that was another, you know, why don't I say this, and then it makes it in, you know, as opposed to what's on the script. But not so much for the 4Kids stuff. I've you know, if there was any rewriting done, it was done by the directors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like I couldn't say, if I had an idea, I didn't feel like it was shot down, but it wasn't, there were writers there for a reason.
Yes.
But we also knew, like, who wrote writers. If I saw a script, I'd be like, oh, they underwrite, we're going to have to pad this. I sort of got into a groove. With One Piece, now you said you got some mail about Sonic. Did you get any mail about on MySpace about One Piece? Because that was a controversial piece of work.
Yeah. There was always talk about how much people hated our version of One Piece.
I know.
But I feel like a lot of that fell on certain actors. I didn't get the brunt of it. I didn't get the worst of it. I know who did, and it wasn't me. So that, you know, that was nice.
Well, and it wasn't just, I mean, listen, aside from maybe them not liking a performance, I think people, and Steve, you can back me up and stop me at any time, we're so disgruntled at the changes that they were already riled up.
Yeah.
Because they wanted the true show, you know, Steve, please, explain that.
I think it's just, you know, I don't think the blame really, like, and from what we've learned as we've done this podcast, I don't think the blame really just falls on one person in particular, and especially it shouldn't fall on the actors. Yeah. This was the vision that they presented and didn't click, but
right.
Yeah. We learned something really interesting talking to one of the writers that they would ask the Japanese team for more information about the show so they could write the characters and write the character arcs, and they would say, hey, is there a reason why this character loves treasure? Or and they weren't given information, so they were in many ways forced to write in vaguely, which never makes for So I feel like a lot of it, we were all at a disadvantage. The writers were not getting info. We weren't getting info.
Yeah. And also, I think that show was, they had to really adapt it for children.
Yeah.
So a lot of the meaning was stripped away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fun to be a part of it still.
Yeah.
But,
my gosh.
Besides all that, I'm curious if there were like any standout moments from One Piece playing Usopp that still resonate with you. I asked just One Piece fan bias. I'm curious.
It's such a blur. Yeah. It's such a blur. I do remember recording a One Piece video game, and I don't know what happened to it. And I remember the director saying, who is going to play this piece of crap? It was like, you basically were moving boxes. That was the entire game. It was like, move a box here, push it over there. It was like, who, what? I don't even know if it came out,
Steve,
It might have been one of, there was a bunch of games that came out.
Okay, so maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that sounds like a mini game in one of them, or maybe that was like the party game. But was it Usopp or was it a different voice?
It was Usopp. Yeah, I was doing Usopp. I might have done another, but I definitely did Usopp for that.
That was one of the shows that we were talking to Chris Collet about the torture of having to cast 80,000 men because there's just so many other voices in that show.
Now, let me tell you my favorite Chris Collet story.
Oh, yeah, please do.
I did not realize that he was a child celebrity and on camera. So one of my favorite movies growing up was this television remake, or not, it was a television movie of Stephen King's The Langoliers. And I taped it off of television. My cousin and I watched it so many times. It was just, we loved it. We loved it. And when I found out that he was the Rick Moranis type character in that, I mean, I'm still like amazed. Like if I talked to Chris Collet today, I'd be like,
you fangirled.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, I didn't hide it at all. Like that's all I talked to him about every session going forward.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that was my favorite Chris Collet
Well, also
story.
that probably wasn't the credit he thought you were going to bring up either.
Yeah,
he did tons of work. Yeah,
he was
funny.
very pleasantly surprised to hear that anybody, I guess, even remembered that movie.
You wore that VHS tape out.
Oh my gosh, did I ever? It was so good. I loved it.
The made for TV movie. I don't know if there's any more. I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't.
Yeah, Miss Belky from Perfect Strangers was in it.
Yes.
He's an incredible voice actor, by the way.
Yeah, he's great.
Unbelievable. Bronson Pinchot. If you have not listened to an audiobook that he narrates, again, stop the podcast and go to. He's like, but who would have thought that would have been his incredible skill set from know? But there you go. So after you were at 4Kids till like the bitter end, kind of. So you worked on. Do you have any Winx Club memories?
Yeah,
that you can share?
I believe Tony Salerno was directing that, and I was Lord Darkar, who sounded a lot like an angrier Shadow.
Was that a job you auditioned for, or was that one that was just like given to you? Okay, because sometimes we were just given shows.
Yeah, usually the stuff I was given was like a character, like a one
bartender
episode. Yeah, or I think a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. I was given. I don't think I auditioned for some of the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, but a large majority was just you had to audition for it.
So the Winx Club. Let's hear this one. So. You do your Shadow voice, but you said more like menacing, or?
Yeah, so Shadow was a little more this, and Lord Darkar was a little harder around the edges. There was a lot more bite to what he was saying, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's
cool.
what it was.
That's scary for a kid show. I don't think I could handle that.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever worked on Winx Club. I mean, tonally, that seemed probably different from the stuff you had been working on. Did you feel like there was a different approach to any of that, or was it just the same kind of stuff?
No. Yeah, I mean, everything had its own certain approach. I think the thing that was the least like anything else I had done was Go-Go Riki, where I played
Oh.
Chico Ricky was a little nerdy guy and just loved cheese and he was so neurotic. I think that felt like it was more for an Adult Swim type show as opposed to kids. But everything else sort of was for me, felt like a variation of everything else I had done there.
Right.
And I think that was the challenge too, was to keep everything fresh and not sounding like what I had just done. I do have something cool to say though. So here's the thing I didn't ever consider. So I'm getting, once in a while people would like what I did and I'd get a letter about that, but most people didn't. And then I did 2 conventions 14 years ago, and that was it. I did one convention. I think I got like $1,000 appearance fee. And then the second convention, they offered me more money, but then nobody ever paid me. Nobody showed up to the convention. It was a live hedgehog convention. There were actual hedgehogs running around on tables. And
What?
And then the fact that we got burned, all of us, Pete Capella was there, Lisa, Mike, Pollock, none of us got paid. And I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like worth it,
Mm-hmm.
I've never factored in that the kids who were 5 or 6 at the time that the show came out and weren't writing me threatening letters on MySpace would grow into be 20, 30-year-olds now and would embrace this whole convention culture and want to meet us. And I just never, ever considered it because I thought...
It's bananas.
I just thought, well, that's that. It's over. I thought it's a really cool thing to tell people I used to do this, and that's that. But now that we are able to travel around the world and meet these people, and for them to tell us their stories, like I still can't fathom what some people tell me, like what our work meant to them.
Right.
And
it's, I mean, listen, you tapped into a big part of why I did this podcast. You and I get to be the face of these shows. We get to go and meet the people and get the compliments or be yelled at or whatever it is. And it's great to talk to actors like you because, again, you and I didn't get to ever have this kind of conversation. But interviewing the writers and directors and sound engineers and telling them how much they don't get to hear that. And they're the ones who should hear it. They spent many more hours doing this than we did. And I'm glad to shine a light on them. And I feel like a cog in this big wheel. And I want people to get the attention and be interviewed who aren't normally interviewed.
Right.
So it's been really fun. And also just to hear their side of it. We came in at the end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Lisa and I had this discussion in Sacramento last year.
Lisa Ortiz, we should say.
Sorry. Yes, Lisa Ortiz. About how we were the generation of the last broadcast television Saturday morning cartoons that on TV. And I never even thought about that. I never even knew that because after
it
us,
was appointment television stopped being a thing.
Right.
I miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve. I mean, we were talking about this.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest reasons why 4Kids kind of collapse. It's, a bunch of reasons, but 4Kids is pretty much like one of the last beacons of that. Yeah. I think one of the last blocks remaining. So it's very, it's on the nose. I would say. You guys aren't wrong.
Aside from the obvious characters that you played, who gets brought up to you at conventions that you're surprised? Does anyone mention Go-Go Ricky? Or
No, not Go-Go Ricky, but I just did an appearance in McAllen, Texas, and somebody came up to me and mentioned a show that I did that I thought they just recorded it onto a DVD and then it was someone's coaster, for their drink. It's called Spike Team that I did while I was in New York, where I played a girls volleyball coach named Lucky. And this person knew all about it. And I was like,
wow.
How did you see this show? I also played an Indian superhero named Shaktiman. And someone at a convention mentioned Shaktiman. Oh, that was one. People will mention things that I had not even thought of in years at these conventions. And it's so
great.
It's such a rewarding experience in that sense. That's like, oh my gosh, all these hours that I spent on this show or whatever, it didn't just fly off into the universe and not, land on someone's ears.
Yeah, it is crazy. Because a lot of that stuff, And I think even when I auditioned for the initial 4Kids stuff, like you said, like you were like, what is this show? I don't know, until it was actually Sonic. I thought it was going to go the way of like, just end up on a DVD or VHS tape somewhere that no one ever watched.
Yeah.
But not, Jason, where can people find you to follow you so they can meet you in their cities?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Jason Griffith. So real_Jason Griffith. I'm also on Twitter at JGriff, the number 4 real. JGriff 4 real.
We're very into the number 4 on this podcast.
So many.
That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I always post multiple times about any appearance that I'm making. I'm so excited about it. I hadn't done it in so long, and then my now agent reached out about a year and a half ago and asked if I was interested. And initially I said no, because I remembered the hedgehog convention.
Yeah.
And then my wife said, why don't you give it a chance? So I credit my wife fully for me saying, all right, I'll write him back and I'll tell him I'll try it out, Right. And it's been for lack of a better word, it's been such a blessing in my life to be able to do this. And it's sort of like the second coming of just an incredible thing that happened to me that I still can't wrap my head around fully,
We're very lucky, and I tell people, because people are like, well, you never come to my city. Something great you guys at home can do if you want to meet Jason at your local convention is simply write to the convention. You can tweet at a convention, you can find their contact information often on their website, because they want to make you the attendees happy. So if you're dying to meet Jason and he just hasn't been to your part of the world or country yet, just hit them up, and they might not invite him right away, but if you and a bunch of friends write to them a lot and annoy them enough, they'll invite him. Or Steve is an artist who does convention appearances. I do them. You guys have to speak up and make your voices heard too. Yeah. So, and we always appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, the outpouring of love and when someone comes up to you crying uncontrollably and telling you how much you meant to them, it's very overwhelming at first, but then I get it, because I think of Full House for me. And when things weren't going well at my house, or when people were fighting or whatever, and I needed to escape, I knew that Full House was there waiting for me. A huge reason why I thought, maybe I could do this for a living too, and be in the Tanner household, so I get it,
Yeah, we have to reframe it and make it about what spoke to us, because we didn't grow up with these shows or anime really the way they did.
Right.
Oh, Jason, thank you so much for talking to us.
Oh, anytime. There's so much more to say. I'm sure we could do a part 2 of this.
We will. We're going to annoy you again. Don't you worry.
Okay. I can't wait.
Thank you.
All right.
Gotta go fast. Gotta go fast. I should have made him sing the song.
Faster.
And now
faster.
It's going to be in my head all night, which is not a bad thing.
No. And I'm about to say, and that chorus is the opposite of how we go about closing out these podcasts every week.
You know what I should do, though? I feel like that's a good alarm clock song. Like, I feel like I should have that to wake up to. It maybe would help me not press snooze for so long.
I don't have an audible alarm clock. I just have I have it on
vibration?
vibrate. Yeah, but I
that
realized
wakes you up.
Yeah, sometimes, but not. I realized though certain countertops. Or I think it's because I got a different phone case for it, and I realized it was starting to it was almost like softening that sound a little bit. But
wait, but why don't you have an audible alarm? Like, wouldn't you just don't want it?
No. I have not needed it. And I don't even have like an audible like ringtone. My phone's just on.
Well, like a ringtone I get, because again, like you could call them back.
Yeah.
But like an alarm clock is like crucial. Like
Right.
I need a noise just in case. Like, because a vibration I would think was an earthquake.
When I gotta get up like at 4 a.m. to like catch a flight, I'll make sure I have a chime there or something. But
thank God. Okay, I'm relieved.
But other than that, I haven't. I haven't used like a ringtone. I don't even have my phone on vibrate anymore. I think just because we always have. we always have, because we always have our phones on us, and
Yeah, but if it's in your pocket, how do you? There's no vibration or ringtone.
Because I'll probably check my phone like every 10 minutes or something. So
you're a psychopath.
Yeah, and then again,
I don't know
it's
how
like,
I feel about this.
I don't know. I think like maybe it's different for you because you're getting like, callbacks or auditions coming in.
No, it's just my mom and dad call me 80 times a day, and if I don't pick up right away, they think I'm dead. So, sorry, Dad. I know you're listening to this.
I think I got to the point where I don't know. I would get calls from my dad. I'd be like, I don't think there's going to be any of this conversation going to be of any substance. I think it's just, I think he's bored. I could suss a vibe.
Your dad's not listening to this episode, apparently, or the podcast at all.
He has no idea. He has no idea. He can't.
Does your dad listen to any podcasts?
Probably about baseball.
Okay.
But
he's not a podcast person in general.
I think he only just learned what a podcast. He knew I
knew the word.
He knew it because I was still living with my parents when I was recording One Piece podcast, but I don't think he listened to a podcast maybe until the last few years or so. I don't know.
Right. The reason I asked is because I realize there's podcast people and there's non-podcast people. Like, and there's a weird learning curve. And like we've talked about that with this show. Like if you guys are listening to this episode, you probably have friends who would like it, but that are not podcast people. And sometimes converting them into listeners is harder than you think. Like you have to ease them in by saying, okay, well, you can play it on YouTube, but there's no image. And then slowly it took me until the pandemic to become a podcast person,
I think it's
listener.
It's like, I don't know, when, I'll just use the social aspect of drinking alcohol. Let's say, I know not everyone does it. I feel like it's like recommending somebody wine over just like instead of them just getting a case of White Claws. It's like no, this is you want to be at
Savor
peace.
It, drink
you want to throw this on. There's no annoying edits or anything. It's I should say it's for an older crowd. I don't know. I don't know if any Zoomers are listening to podcasts. Maybe they are. I don't know.
But I like it because you can multitask. Like to me, if you're that's why I don't understand the whole YouTube podcast of it all, because that's a screen that you think you're going to watch. Like I love a podcast on in the background. Like it feels like my roommate. I'm like, oh yeah. And again, like especially something where I don't have to pay intense. I don't have to pay attention intensely to it.
I think maybe some podcasts are a little more. It's it's all based around the chemistry, and maybe there's a lot of like joking around and stuff. And maybe you want to see those reactions. You want to see
maybe. Oh yeah, possibly.
But half the time, it's like no, I don't think people ask for us to put videos of us recording on this because like 80% of the time it's us just sitting in our chairs in front of a computer and we're just talking.
We're not that interested to look at. I mean, we're fine, but
we don't do this in person. Yeah.
No, and again, I love the audio medium. So like I love this as an so to me, but I have been asked, like Michelson or Nicholas, who will interview, is like, why don't you do video? I was like, it's an audio. It's a podcast,
and that's a whole
it's a true podcast.
That's a whole nother production too. And you gotta. And
I don't have time for that.
You have to have a set. You gotta have good lighting. You gotta have.
Well, no, lots of people do it with just wherever room they're in. Like I've been on those shows where it's not about the aesthetic of it, and that's fine.
I'd be more inclined to watch a podcast where everyone's in the room together. I mean, Conan O'Brien does that, but I think
that's what I'd prefer too.
And not that there's anything wrong with our show. It's just the limitations.
It's an audio show.
I'd be more likely to watch that than watch a podcast where everyone's recording over a Zoom call.
Right. I tweeted recently, like, you can't watch anime while you drive, but you can listen to a podcast about anime while you drive.
Yeah.
So that's what this show is for. It's for the people who are multitasking and want to listen to something about anime and blah, blah, blah.
I don't know. And I'm I have a job where I'm always at, my computer. So it's like I need something to get me through the day. And
And a podcast. Yeah. See, I can't listen to podcasts while I record because that would be that wouldn't work.
Well, it's like me trying to watch anime while I'm trying to draw. It's just,
yes, you could not do that.
Nah, I've lost that.
We'd be fired immediately.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for listening. Jason was an awesome guest. I'm so glad we got some time with him, and that was really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the word interesting. I shouldn't use that. That was insightful, but he's a great guy.
Yeah, and it was really ribbing you. We were talking about how we didn't know what the
Mark Ruffalo, man. Oh, he looks. Next time, y'all look up Mark Ruffalo and look up Jason Griffith, and you would believe they are related.
It's a similar vibe. Like Mark Ruffalo seems like, oh yeah, he looks like an older cousin to him. It's just. Yes. He I think you commended him, but also, he did make the right choice because he fooled you.
And then now he thinks I'm a gullible person, which I don't actually think of myself as a gullible person.
You just want to believe in people.
I heard about a fantastic prank today. They were invited to their high school reunion, and they hired a stripper in their place to pretend they were this person, like, because it was years later. So they had, I guess they hired someone who looked like them, and they that was their prank on their high school class. And I thought, that is brilliant. And I'm sad I didn't think of it.
Yeah, I don't really care to go to a high school reunion. So
no
it
interest.
Would be funny to just send someone there and just But the unfortunate thing would be if you send someone there as a prank and they wind up being cooler than what people perceived you as. So now you're the worst version of yourself. So
right. I don't really know what my status was, but I don't think people miss me not being at my high school reunion or even notice that I'm not there. Like I don't think anyone cares. And that's fine. I don't.
Yeah, I think you and I are in similar positions, and it's okay because if you think high school was peak,
we probably don't have that much in common.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right. On that,
but if there's any people in high school listening to this show somehow, enjoy yourselves. But there's plenty to look forward to. Yeah.
But the people who peek in, you know what? I'm going to shut my mouth because I'm going to get canceled for whatever I say next.
Conversation for another day.
Hopefully we'll talk to Mark Ruffalo on the show soon.
Yeah, I would love to get him on.
I'm going to beat myself up for that for a while. Thank you guys for listening. We will
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4Kids Flashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening.